Thank you. We'll move on to the approval of minutes. This is for the governing board meeting on February 14th. Second semester, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining, the motion carries. We'll move on to general functions, and our first item is student staff committee recognition.
Thank you, President Pratt and members of the board. We have a few special announcements before I get into district-wide recognitions. First up is Miss Kelly Pinkerton.
President Pratt, Superintendent Caruth, and members of the board, I'm going to invite my Vail Blended friends to come on over this way. At Vail Blended Learning, we have the unique ability to have students come to school Monday through Thursday for their core classes, and then we have the ability to offer optional electives on Fridays. And one of those electives is the garage band. And that is led by the fantastic Mr. Sherwood. And, they're elective Fridays, and we have about 1/3 of our student population who elect and choose to come to this garage band elective on Fridays. Mr. Sherwood uses the garage band iPad app to teach music theory and foster creativity in students. The iPads were funded by the Vail School District Foundation. Mr. Sherwood incorporates those capabilities of music creation with iMovie to allow students to create public service announcements, commercials, and use their creativity to entertain as well as educate. So first, I want to thank Mrs. Murray, Mr. Sherwood, and our wonderful Vail Blended students who were able to attend today to share their work with you.
Thank you, President Pratt, Superintendent Caruth, and members of the board. First, I'd like to introduce Livy Weil, 7th grader. Thank you, Livy. When we teach theory, one of the first concepts I introduced was this word ostinato, which means a repeating pattern, basically. And so Livy decided to cover a very famous representation of an ostinato, which is Johann Pachelbel's Canon in D. A lot of you may have heard it before in your own weddings or other people's weddings before too. I know I had it in mine as well. But Livy actually created just a 12-bar sample of this Canon in D major, and it was created using the smart piano function on the GarageBand app. Great, this works. Just a quick snippet there. And then next we have Briley McIntyre, who's an 8th grader. Briley has created an original rock song piece. They recorded 13 bars in the key of A major, featuring 5 instruments commonly used in rock and roll. And the song is appropriately titled Rock and Roll. Nicely done, Briley. Good job. And this is a little sample of some of our crew there having a good old time. Lastly, I'd like to introduce Ronan Bushman, who's a 6th grader. So Ronan created and combined 3 original songs to make for a backtrack for a movie that we decided to make. The video's purpose is to educate students in the science classroom regarding how to properly use supplies in the science classroom. In this case, specifically dry erase erasers.
Thank you all. Yep. Yes, please.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. Thank you all for coming and thank you parents for helping with the process and bringing them here. Next up, for special announcements, we have Ms. Heather Stow and Ms. Linda Kubiak.
Good evening, President Pratt, Mr. Kruth, and members of the board. Mrs. Kubiak and I are here this evening to acknowledge the hundreds of volunteers and staff who made Vail Pride Day 2023 happen. Even a hazmat snow day couldn't stop us that week. Our 3 days were filled with moments of connection and celebration and joy. And what these moments reflect is that collective support and pride that our community has for our students.
And so I want to acknowledge the Vail Pride Day Committee. This all volunteer committee again planned and executed the 3 days of Vail Pride Day for staff, families, and the community to enjoy. Fundraising was led by Peggy Bunston-Runyon and Mark Tate, and over $70,000 was raised. The Communications and Marketing Committee were ready to help with all areas of communication. So thanks to Kendra Santucci, Robin Klinger-McGee, Amanda Calkins, and Rena Whitwer. Facilities, they show up way before we do. They're there during and they stay late. Thanks to Bobby Miles, Brad Giles, Dakota Willems, and the rest of the facilities for all they do. And a shout out to our custodians led by Sean O'Daniel, who are always there and do and ready to assist with anything we ask them.
An important piece of Vail Pride Day was our fun run that actually happened in January. And we had over 100 runners at Andrada, and this was linked through their amazing MavFest event. We had Shauna Nordling and Rod Carey who helped to plan and make that event happen.
Our first day of the 3 days was our volunteer luncheon. Shout out to the volunteer coordinators across the district and our MCs, Mark Tate and Amy Burton, for making the event special for our volunteers. I'd also like to acknowledge our own NJROTC teams for all 3 days. Kendra Santucci, Empire High School, and Cienega High School student photographers for capturing all 3 days with their photos.
There are a lot of great people that made our Friday Staff Awards and Luncheon happen as well. We had our sound crew, Bros Entertainment, that was Nick Gomez and Hector Solito, and they were actually former Vail students who had come full circle that they now got to support our Vail Pride Day event. Our technology team for all 3 days was Melissa Matias, Dion Nieto, and Nicole Hoffman. Our incredible MCs, Ginny Graves and Mark Tate, and then Chance Calgar, who took our photographs that day. And we're going to make sure I'm listening.
Yeah.
Show Kendra Santucci put together just a 2-minute video of Saturday, and so we're going to show that as Linda shares some more words of appreciation.
So, well, whoops. There we go. So, as you watch the short video, I'm just going to run through the names and acknowledge those and thank them. Carol Langford for the parade and opening ceremonies. Jerry Brown and Justin Drake for bringing out our new buses. Ben Nauer and Randy Smith for special performances. The community programs directors and staff for their Kids Zone. Trina Lakin, Elizabeth Chesbrough, and Kelly Gloria for the Wellness Corner. Kiki No and Lisa Altman for organizing all of our food fundraisers. Jill Wells for coordination of the community interest groups. Rachel Tankersley for the STEM showcase and science area. Jackie Wolf for organizing the plethora of jumping castles we had, Megan Nolan, Brent Edwards, Ethan Hurley, Emily Marshall, Linda Roush, Rita Boyd, Kelly Pinkerton, Aaron Schmidt, Debbie Penn, and Eileen Short for the coordination of AJ and Math Bowl, Janet Roby and Ruth Latona for overseeing the art displays that were beautifully displayed in Thurber Hall, and Jared Hughes for leading the music performances on Saturday.
And just a few more thank yous to our executive team, our Vail Pride Day executive team, Peggy Benson-Runyon, Ginny Graves, Chris Harms, and Mark Tate. Of course, Linda for being the best co-chair that anyone could ask for. All of you, our superintendents, our governing board members, and to Ann Gibson, the visionary and founder of our event. And that vision still carries on 24 years later. And to our entire Vail Pride Day team, what's just one more thank you. They are a beautifully dedicated group who lived out our district motto, where education is a community effort. And to our community for choosing to join us in celebrating our volunteers, our staff, and most importantly, our students. Thank you.
So I just want to add. I remember well sitting in the room when Ms. Gibson brought the idea of Vail Pride Day. At the time we had 4 schools, and thinking, wow, that's a really audacious goal to pull all that together and put it out there and live out our motto of supporting children and being proud of them in a community-wide way. So for 24 years we've been doing that work, and we have 22 schools now, and the complexity to be able to pull off that kind of a day is just huge. And instead of a day, it is now 3, which it has been. So I never want to stop being in awe of the fact that we can make those days happen for the purpose of showing pride in the young people in our community, as an entire community. And that takes leadership. And I also just want to thank Heather and Linda for their leadership. They pull it all together. Have a few other recognitions. Mr. Morris, followed by Mrs. Sorry, Dean, give you a heads up.
Good evening, President Pratt, Mr. Caruth, members of the board. I want to start off by, sorry, that's awkward. Recognizing Dr. Elizabeth Shaw. She's a 7th grade social studies teacher at Rincon Vista, for providing students opportunity to participate in 2 essay contests and an oratorical contest. The first event was the Daughters of the American Revolution essay contest, where one of our 7th grade students wrote about being a delegate during the 1775-1776 Second Continental Congress. That student chose a colony and explained what would be important to accomplish for that colony from the perspective of a delegate. He was honored at a luncheon at Casa Molina in February, where he read his essay and received a $25 check. His essay is going to be entered into the state competition in May. Mrs. Shaw also worked with the Rincon Optimist Club to sponsor the second essay contest and the oratorical contest. For the essay contest, we had 15 students write to the prompt, "Who is an everyday hero who brings out the optimism in you?" The winner earned a prize of $200 and will have their essay entered in the state competition in April. The second place person was awarded $100 and the third place winner was awarded $50. For the oratorical contest, we had 16 students speak for 5 minutes on the topic of discovering the optimism within me. The winner earned a prize of $200 and will participate in the state competition in April. The second place winner earned $100, will also participate in the state competition in April. And the third place winner received a $50 prize. Ironically, the first and second place winners were sisters, and they were outstanding. I want to say thank you to the Rincon Optimist Club for sponsoring these contests at Rincon Vista for the past 11 years. Special thank you to Mark Tate and the Vail Coffee Stop for providing a wonderful breakfast to our students and their families during the oratorical contest. I want to recognize our student data coordinator and workroom tech, Amy Mazinski, for all she does to support our teachers. She also provides unmeasurable support for our SAT with everything she does connected to collecting data and tracking student data. In fact, I asked her for a favor related to data via email, and she had it to me within an hour about a week or 2 ago. It was unreal. We simply couldn't do what we do without her. I want to recognize Mike Chokel for organizing and training our mathletes who participate in the Math Bowl during Vail Pride Day. Mike Chokel is actually a Cienega math teacher. He comes to Rincon Vista because we start so early to teach our geometry class. And so he trained our mathletes for the Math Bowl. I also want to recognize Brianna Fonseca for organizing and leading practice sessions with our academic Jeopardy teams. I'm also proud to share that we took first place in 8th grade, first place in 7th grade, and second place in 6th grade. It was kind of ironic that Vail Blended was here because I think they prevented the clean sweep. I want to recognize, and last but not least, I want to recognize our PTO for providing our staff treat bags during parent-teacher conferences and drinks from the Vail Coffee Stop on Valentine's Day. Special thank you to Hillary Mahoney, Lauren Zajac, and Rebecca Fannin for delivering those drinks in person to teachers. Thank you.
Mr. Penn, followed by Mr. Nick.
Good evening, President Pratt, Mr. Caruth, members of the board. We had an amazing opportunity earlier this morning at our leadership meeting to take some time to reflect on those people who have lifted us up, who have helped us be exceptional at our work, and who have impacted us recently. And it was so wonderful to look around the room and be able to identify a story and a time and a moment with just about everyone in the room. And I don't have enough time to go through all of that, but I'm prefacing it because it really put me in a place of reflecting on the impact that people have and that the people that I work with have on me specifically. And I wanted to call to your attention some of these moments and to recognize some of the people who have done this work. I'd like to lift up and recognize Michelle Wood. She has been in a couple of really difficult situations in the past couple of weeks. One, in helping guide and mentor one of our leaders who had a loss of staff member on their campus. And also she has worked very closely with one of our high schools, helping to provide above and beyond support for a student who was in need outside of the school day. And she gave very freely and generously of her time and her heart. I'd also like to lift up Corey Brockman. She is not only receiving the mentorship and support of Michelle, but she is providing that same leadership to the members of her staff in this difficult time. I want to lift up also some of our Beyond Textbook team members. I was thinking about the experience I've had recently doing a data dig in Northern Arizona that had over 100 people from across the state coming to help figure out how to improve education for the students. And I see your shirts because kids, it's like, so why do we do that? Why do we go out to other school districts and help grow excellence in the leadership there? And it's because kids, if they're not in our district, they're in another district in Arizona, and we're partners. And those who have been extremely supportive of that work is Justin Chesbrough, who works diligently to forge and to build and to maintain those quality relationships with other school districts across our state. Jen Estrada, who provides impeccable tech support. I don't even have to worry about walking into a room because she can figure it all out. Megan Folkers, who sometimes we don't see her as much because she works remotely from Prescott, but at these data digs, she shows up and she is part of the team, and it is as if she were here every day. And I'd also like to lift up and recognize Ethan Hurley. He is an absolute expert in high school instruction, in high school. I can't even put words around his knowledge base, but all of these pieces that our schools are measured by to determine the effectiveness and the impact on children, how graduation is going, how we're providing opportunities for kids academically and in college and career preparedness. He has tips and insights that he shares, and he is someone that those in the audience are just drawn to, and they want to hear what he has to say, and what he has to say helps them be better. I'd also like to lift up Chelsea Scopoletti. She was not on this BT trip with us. She's part of the BT team. She's also a parent of a student in the district, and that student is part of our Chinese immersion program. And she spent 2 evenings outside of her work to come and speak to parents who were coming up out of the middle school and into the high school to help share some experiences that she has had with her son and to help put them at ease with experiences that will lie ahead of them by sharing how that felt and looked and how that worked in her home. And I want to thank and acknowledge her for that. Thank you.
Pinkerton, followed by
President Pratt, Mr. Caruth, members of the board. I'd like to start off by recognizing Carrie Rona, school counselor for the Vail Innovation Center, Vail Blended Learning, and Savano. She recently took 8th grade Vail Blended and Vail Virtual students to the U of A for a discovery into what college has to offer. Students explored the campus, they got to eat lunch with college students and advisors, and learned many basics about college goals. Carrie is always willing to look for ways to connect with our online students and in-person students, and affords them many experiences that can be applied to learning and education outside of the classroom. I'd also like to recognize Ashley Cambenzi, who I believe has a meeting with Mr. Caruth tomorrow, for a seamless transition as a long-term Vail virtual substitute teacher. Finding substitute teachers is always difficult. Finding a virtual substitute teacher is even more difficult. While one of our teachers had a baby this year, she jumped in and has been a great addition to our team. I'd also like to recognize our amazing Vail virtual support staff for always being willing to jump in and support with any task that is needed. We often have a variety of interesting tasks that come up in the virtual world, and they just jump in and do whatever is needed. Thank you to Cindy Barger, Rhonda Hamaker, and Lindsay Gover for all that they do to support our students, families, and staff. And then lastly, I'd like to recognize Cindy Barger and Patty Dobecki for all of their work as our volunteer coordinators at Vail Innovation Center and Savano. They did such a fantastic job helping organize both the volunteer appreciation luncheon, the staff appreciation luncheon, and everything around Vail Pride Day. We couldn't do what we do at our sites without our wonderful volunteer coordinators. Thank you.
President Pratt, Superintendent Caruth, and members of the board. I'd like to start by recognizing Kate Conkey, 5th grade teacher at Ocotillo Ridge, for her recent leadership on our 5th grade California field trip. It was a lot of weather going on in California at the time, and her organization, her leadership, her communication, her positive relationships with students and parents provided a safe, fun, and very memorable trip for all involved. They got home at 1 a.m. I expected them to all get out of the bus tired, but they all came out with smiles, and parents volunteered to come next year, even though their 5th graders won't be with us again because of her. I'd also like to recognize Lindsay Meyer, one of our other 5th grade teachers, for her partnership with Mrs. Conkey in attending the trip. Next, I'd like to recognize our ORE lunch monitors. Now, I'll preface, there's a lot of them, but they're not all out there together at the same time. They rotate. So they are Summer Elliott, Adriana Olson, Heather Shepard, Stephanie Maurer, Tiara Patterson, Yvonne Gomez, Alita Flanagan, Mindy Keeling, Hannah Wentz, Cassie Sonico, Sandy Tedlock, Kimmy Caballero, Tina Moyer, Laura Duncan, Ellen Samuelson, Jessica Vandervoort, and Lonnie Villanueva. They are proactive. They are kind to our students so that they can play and play safely each day, no matter the weather. They provide a nurturing place for students to eat and play. And last, I'd like to recognize those who participated in Vail Pride Day in just an extra way. First, our Academic Jeopardy and Math Bowl coaches, Rachel Green, Tiffany Cook, Kate Conkey, and Ashley Campos, for their efforts to prepare students for a healthy academic competition with peers from other schools. I'd also like to thank Lonnie Villanueva, our music teacher, for her work with our choir, our band, and our orchestra students who performed the national anthem to open up the ceremonies and provided other exceptional musical pieces at Vail Pride Day. And last, Mrs. Laura Duncan, our art teacher, for her ability to organize and ensure each student at ORE had a piece of artwork on exhibit via her beautiful art display. Thank you for your time.
A few other district-wide recognitions I just want to call attention to. While Vail Pride Day was going on, band, choir, and orchestra across the state were having their competitions. So I'd like to, we are not going to name them all, but they'll be reflected in the minutes. Congratulations to 55 band, choir, and orchestra students from Cienega Empire and Mica Mountain High School who competed against other students in the regions. They earned spots at the Regional Honor Music Festival where they performed with other excelling music students at Buena High School in Sierra Vista. Vail Innovation Center, this is Pinkerton is here, received first time ever their A+ designation by the Arizona Education Association. The first time that they were eligible, and they through that eligibility received that award. And then Sonita Valley Elementary, which received again nominated received the A+ Excellence Award. Just a quick note on the A+ Excellence Awards through the Arizona Education Foundation. That Arizona Education Foundation, I think it's an association, it's a foundation. It's an independent group that does the Arizona Teacher of the Year as well as the A+ Awards. And the A+ Award is really authentic. You have to do a complete write-up of what is happening on your campus, an application process that is vetted, peer-reviewed. And then if you receive a visit, they need to see that what you actually wrote in your application matches. And not all schools who receive visits get that A+ designation. So it's just an honor to those schools who go through that process, sharpen their saws in that process, and then ultimately earn that award. I'd also like to recognize Christine Gutierrez, early childhood specialist at Ocotillo Ridge Community Programs, for being awarded, we just found this out, the 2023 nationwide Terry Lynn Lockoff Teacher Award. Christina will be traveling to Philadelphia at the end of April to attend the award celebration where she will receive this award along with $1,000 cash prize. This award honors exceptional child care professionals, and it was created by the Kay and Fred Lockoff in honor of the memory of their daughter, Terry, who is a passionate child care teacher who knew the incredible value of early childhood education. Sonita Valley Preschool, staying with community service, under the direction of Trish Romero, has received a 5-star rating through the Quality First program, which is Arizona's quality rating system for early childhood programs. The 5-star rating is the highest possible rating that a preschool center can receive. So it's, again, just an incredible honor for that program and a testament to the work of the entire community programs early childhood group to make that happen. I'll save the next one for my superintendent's report. Thank you for bearing with us for a slightly longer than normal special announcements and district-wide recognitions. We had to bump some of these things in our shortened pivot of a meeting 2 weeks ago because of the hazmat situation. That's all I have for staff, student, community recognitions.
Item is call to the public. Those wishing to address the board on item not on the consent agenda may do so at this time. Speakers are requested to hold their comments to 3 minutes. And I ask you to please to work with me on that. It's hard to run the meeting if we're going over that 3 minutes. So you'll see that the timer is going to be up there. And so when your time is up, it doesn't mean that we don't want to hear the rest of your comments, but if you could get with me afterwards if there's additional comments. So I just ask you to please adhere to that time frame. I'm going to go through these in the order that I received them. First, I have Peggy Gibson, and then next will be Stephanie.
Excuse me, before my time starts and I start my talk, I just wanted to also give good news that we just came from the wrestling tournament at Rincon Vista, and we follow wrestling through the district every year. And my son is a coach. And so it was really fun and run very well. It was a district-wide. So I just wanted to mention that. All right, here we go. So Superintendent Caruth, members of the board, President Pratt, I received my postcard. I think you're aware of it. This would never have happened had there been a policy in place. And as I've said before in these meetings, Vail seems to have a policy of not having written policies, a policy not to take a stand, a policy to hope that every new issue will be quickly cleaned up before it can be publicly exposed. Employees don't seem to know, seem to be sure of the policies, and I'm not sure if they're supposed to be sure of the policies. And if this seems confusing, I think it's intended to be. Had there been a policy or a rule or a guideline, Mr. Valenzuela's mentor teacher, who I've been told is a very good teacher, would have put a stop to the sexualized lessons and cross-dressing and made the principal aware of concerns before children were exposed to this in the classroom. The principal would have confirmed to the student teacher that the lesson was illegal and it would not be allowed, and then called Superintendent Caruth, who would back him up 100%. That's what happened if district personnel understood expectations and felt accountable. That's what would happen if clear policies were in place. Instead, the district broke the law. Under the current no policy circumstances, I can imagine that the mentor teacher may have thought, since other questionable curricula has been permitted here and there across the district and the dress codes are unclear, that she would be frowned upon or maybe even retaliated against if she called this situation to the attention of administration. 2 board members were asked last week about this situation and responded that Mr. Cruz said he had handled it. I'm asking board members not to rely on Mr. Cruz's assessment of a questionable situation. We elect you and believe that you'll take responsibility for getting answers yourselves by spending time in schools and being open to aggrieved parents, concerned students, and teachers who have questions. You are letting Mr. Cruz off the hook by accepting at face value his assurance that all is well. The truth is, all is well until the next time, and that's what we've seen over the last 2+ years. Because schools are currently in the crosshairs of a faction who would use them, the schools, as a means of radically changing the culture, the Arizona legislature has made it a priority to put laws in place that will protect you as district leaders if you hold the line and make sure our K-12 young people are not exposed to previously unheard of requirements like declaring pronouns and sexualized curriculum. We need changes to be made. We need to put a stop to inappropriate conduct by insisting that Arizona laws are observed and that we establish district policies that protect our children. And I have more information on the situation that happened. If there's someone here in the audience or if board members want to talk to me, I would be happy to clarify anything that I've had to say tonight.
In accordance with the Arizona law, board members may not respond or comment or ask questions of speakers regarding issues not on the agenda. It is permissible for us to make a clarification. So I'd like to invite Mr. Cruz to just clarify our policy.
Yeah, thank you, President Pratt. There is a policy in place, IHAMB, associated regulation IHAMBR, that is provides guidance and is based in law that was passed the last legislative session regarding sexually explicit materials. Staff have been trained on that. All high school staff have been trained on that. We've reviewed that policy in the process as far as in regards to this situation.
Next speaker is Stephanie B. And after Stephanie, we have Alexander Cardieri. And I did that okay?
Hi, I am a parent of students in this district, and a few weeks ago, I was made aware of an incident that happened at Entrada High School with a student teacher. This man, dressed as a woman, gave an assignment to the class that was focused on sexuality. The pictures of the student teacher and the assignment have been circulated on social media as well as in the mail. Upon learning of this, I reached out to you, the board, to get additional information and learn how this was allowed to occur. I appreciate the quick response I received that spoke to the board's feelings of sadness toward this occurring, as well as assurance that current state laws should have prevented this from ever happening. With that being said, this is not the first such incident of a sexualized nature to come up within the last year. There were multiple books with sexualized themes that found their way into the curriculum. What is concerning is that this is moving beyond isolated incidents and is in danger of becoming a pattern of sexualized content being placed before minors in our school district. In these instances, the district responded, albeit very slowly. Having said that, just because you responded does not relieve you of the accountability for allowing this content into the classroom to begin with. State law doesn't allow it, but that was not good enough to keep it from showing up in our classrooms. Clearly, the process failed, and because of that failure, minors were exposed to sexualized content multiple times now. The parents in this district deserve to know what part of the process has failed and what the board is going to do to keep this content away from our children. It has also been reported that the principal of Andrada, when the incident of the student teacher was brought to his attention, did nothing to stop the sexualized content in the classroom, but instead told the students to just leave if they didn't want to be there. If this is true, that principal either does not know state law or blatantly disregarded state law, regardless of the email that was sent out today to parents. What kind of accountability will this principal see for his failure in the process? It is not good enough to simply respond in these instances. There's clearly more work that needs to be done to prevent these instances from happening. Superintendent John Caruth, can you please provide additional detail on how the district is going to stop this in the future? Thank you.
Thank you. We'll follow up with an email. Just because of open meeting law, we can't have a conversation about it here.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Stephanie. I appreciate you coming. Alexander Cardieri, and then our next speaker will be Anastasia Kazakis.
Hi, good evening. I'm a resident and homeowner here in the Vail community, and I'm here to express my concern over what happened at the Andrada High School with this student teacher promoting the LGBTQ agenda. That should not be tolerated. It should never have happened. There needs to be consequences and people held accountable for allowing that lesson to take place. A teacher is supposed to teach according to state standards and not promote an agenda like the LGBTQ. I hate to say this, but the cooperating teacher, I believe it was Miss Moore, allowed that lesson to happen, and she needs to be held accountable. I'm asking for the board to please consider suspending her without pay, if not terminating her, and also the College of Education should be notified to give that student teacher, Mr. Valenzuela, a failing grade. Thank you.
And Anastasia, our final speaker.
Well, I'm here also to speak out against what's been going on here. And this is not a single incident. You all know it. And shame on all of you for allowing this pervasiveness to continue, including the new members. You also should know. For the kids, because of the kids, everything we do has an effect on kids in this district. That is the running motto here, is it not? Everything you're doing, allowing this, among other things, the textbooks that are pervading our system right now. You're allowing fuzzies. The pronouns, which are not the proper English pronouns, I might add, started 2 years ago in this school. And after numerous board meetings, students and parents alike have been telling you time and again, we are not comfortable with this kind of activity in the district. It is not indicative of what this district was supposed to stand for, but now has degraded into. I have been getting phone calls, text messengers, all kinds of contact from all kinds of parents here. And a lot of them, to be really honest with you, are afraid to come here because their kids are still in school and they don't want to be identified because they think their kids are going to have retribution placed upon them if they speak out. That is what they have been telling me. And while you, Mr. Caruth, and maybe you, Ms. Pratt, has been reaching back out to some of these parents and even, potentially on behalf of their kids in this classroom or within the schools that have been having these pervasive issues that still have yet to be addressed. Do you realize all of you are federally accountable at this point under Arizona State Statute 13, 3501, and 3506? You knew and should have known. You were notified. It's a class 4 felony in this state now. I hope you really take this under consideration, especially for you two being new members of the board. You need to know the state laws in relation to all of this. We are sick and tired of having our kids sexualized. I had to pull mine out because of instances in this school which were never addressed, which I could still actually press charges against the district and I would win. But I'm here telling you right now, this business should be the last time that any of us ever sees this crap in the district. Ever. And for all of you to sit here and think, oh, well, you know, if I just let somebody know, okay, yeah, we're going to take care of it. When are you going to take care of it? When did you take care of the pronoun business? That's still sexualizing our kids. You're taking away our kids' identities. This business with the fuzzies, allowing them to wear costumes in school. Grow up. This is an educational institution. You should all be ashamed of yourselves in class 4 felony.
Thank you. Our next agenda item is acknowledgement of public request to speak. This is for items on tonight's agenda. I don't have any requests to speak on items on tonight's agenda. So we'll move on to our correspondence and reports. The first item is superintendent's report. Mr. Cruz.
Thank you, President Pratt, members of the board. I'll just make it quick. Just a reminder that spring break is we're on the cusp of spring break. Begins Monday, March 6th, runs through Friday, March 17th. If you're looking for something to do prior to spring break, I would encourage anybody who's so inclined to attend the Empire High School drama performance, SpongeBob SquarePants, the musical. It's running Thursday, Friday, Saturday night at 7 p.m. That's all I have for superintendent's report.
Thank you. Next is board reports. Do any board members have a report at this time? Mr. Buster?
Had a wonderful opportunity for the Sienna High School.
Sorry, Siri is trying to my wife, and I don't know why. In our meeting, go ahead.
That had a wonderful tour of Cienega High School with the principal as well as Commander Murga with the Naval ROTC, phenomenal program over there. Got to see the little houses in the district being built, which was phenomenal. Some wonderful students that we have in the district, awesome teachers, great principals. Also had the opportunity to tour Old Vail Middle School, and that was really exceptional.
Thank you. Mr. Buster. Any other board reports? Mrs. Tippett?
Yeah, thank you. I had the opportunity to join Mr. Buster and a group on our tour of Cienega and Old Vail, and really want to highlight our administration at Cienega. As while we were doing our tour, actually 2 students had separate medical emergencies happening, and seamlessly handled that for the student and for their families. Something that I was really pleased to learn from that incident is that a staff member actually accompanies a child from the school on the ambulance to the hospital and remains with the student until a parent can arrive. And I just think that's good policy. Appreciate that. Also appreciated the opportunity to tour at Old Vail, where we had an opportunity to review several of the capital improvements that have happened over there over the last few years. And then discussion of additional capital improvements that are happening, that are needed, and grateful to have the funds available to us to be able to do these things. I know for several years, our capital budgets were encumbered by the state legislature. Also really appreciated all of the effort and time that went into planning Vail Pride Day and executing Vail Pride Day from staff and community members, student groups. It's a great opportunity for our student groups to fundraise and pursue opportunities for their clubs or activities that they're part of. It was amazingly well attended. The building was packed all day until maybe the last half an hour. And just it was really good to be back and really have the community come back. So grateful for the parents, family, and community members who came out to support all of our students. And that's my report.
Thank you. Yeah. So I was able in the last few weeks to have lunch with Mr. Cruz at a few schools at Cottonwood, at Sycamore, and Rincon Vista, and just grateful for just that kind of one-on-one with some of the staff there and just sitting down and talking with them. I am grateful for our staff and just getting to know them a little bit more. I also got to join the site tours at Cienega and Old Vail. And as a parent of students that have gone to those schools, I thought I knew so many things, but there was so much that I got to learn. Thank you to Kim Middleton and Julia Kaiser for that tour and for their staff, and just being able to see the good that they are doing and so many programs. And just on what Kelly said about Vail Pride Day, our family loves Vail Pride Day. I love being able to go there with my kids and being able to volunteer, and just I think I watched a video that had been put out about Vail Pride Day the week before, and Ann Gibson said Vail Pride Day is about relationships, and I felt that day as as I got to see people that I love to see through the district, and my kids just being able to see friends. As you grew up in Vail, we wind up a lot of times going to different high schools, and so just seeing their friends, it was a day about relationships. So thank you. Thank you. Mr. King?
Since we didn't get to our last, our last board meeting was via Zoom and everything else. Several of us actually got to go to Cottonwood Elementary and go to their weekend backpack program and see how they actually take care of the Vail community outside of normal, work days, normal weekdays and everything else. So that was actually pretty good to see there. Additionally, we had Vail Pride Day, and I think as I told Heather and others who were there, if I had one word to describe Vail Pride Day, it was intentionality. Because nothing like that comes together without actually a lot of people being on the ground to put in the time, the blood, sweat, and tears, and more of the volunteer aspect. So that was actually really, really good to see. And thanks to everybody who kind of put that together. And I've kind of done some unofficial polling of other school board members and school districts. Nobody else does anything like that. So something above and beyond. Last Monday was a very, very long day for me. I went up to the Capitol for ASBA's Advocacy Day, and it was very interesting to be one of the few from Southern Arizona. But it was actually kind of nice being up there and meeting with other people. So, and then coming back that night was very nice to see all of our board members at the Pima County School Board and Superintendent Collaboration Meeting that was held downtown. So we actually, got to see how some of the other board dynamics are, and it's kind of a testament to this board and to Vail on how this community has put together this board. So I just wanted to throw that up there. Thanks.
Thank you. I have a quick report. I also attended the visit to Cienega High School. I had to dip out a little early and didn't attend. I wasn't able to go to Old Vail. But I loved being on campus. I think that you can't be on campus and see how much our educators love kids and how much they pour into each one of our kids. That was true at Cienega, and it's true at all of our sites. So it was really wonderful to be out and about and seeing what's happening in our schools. I also loved Vail Pride Day. I walked through all the art exhibits. I listened to some music, watched a little bit of dance. I watched the math bowl. My older son participated in that. That was really impressive. I learned that Brent Edwards is actually quite good at math. I had no idea. But I just thought the whole event was just so innovative. So one example was at the math bowl. Instead of having a buzzer, each school had a QR code, and depending on the letter of the answer, you would turn your QR code depending on the direction. And that just blew my mind anyways. I could barely do a QR code. So turning it and trying to figure all that out, it's just so seamless. It was a great opportunity for these kids to participate in that program. And it wasn't just an apple. Every event was just so innovative. There was just so much time and effort that went into all the details. The food trucks were amazing. I just think it just went off just so well. I think the only thing that could have been better is if we didn't have that hazmat spill. So next year we'll just make note of that, not to do that. Great. It was a great event. So thank you to all those who participated in that. I loved Mrs. Penn's comments, the recognitions, where you said instead of just recognizing that you're lifting them up. And I think each one of us in our community, we own a part of this community. And so as we fall short, I think about the video that we've probably all seen in our life of a runner who's just short of a finish line and who just can't quite make it, where other runners come up and link arms and help that runner across the finish line. And I just hope in our community that we could do that, that when we fall short, when we struggle a little bit, that we could link arms and make it better together. The best way to communicate a problem or concern in the district would be to email the board. It's a fast resolution, and things can get addressed quickly. So just wanted to remind the community about that. So our email addresses are on the website. If there's no other board reports, we'll move on to the consent agenda.
President,
Yes.
just quickly,
Yes.
I was taken aback during the events. I had the opportunity to attend all of the Vail Pride Day events. And one of the, I guess, the crowning moments was seeing our people, our community celebrating our district, our people, our educators, our staff. And I just want to again say congratulations to everybody, but more so those individuals that were provided awards. Best teacher, best educator, but best staff member, and some of the volunteers from the community that step up and make this community, make this district great. So again, congratulations to all the award winners.
Thank you, Mr. Bester. So our next item, we're going to move on to the consent agenda. All items listed below are consent matters and will be considered by one motion at this time. There'll be no discussion of consent items. Any board member may remove an item from the consent agenda by request. All items not accepted and approved as part of the consent agenda will be considered individually. Do any board members have any items to pull? Not seeing any, Mr. Cruz.
Thank you, President Pratt and members of the board. It's recommended that the Vail School District Governing Board approve all items on the consent agenda as presented.
I'll accept a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. King moves and Mrs. Tippett seconds. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Not seeing any, the motion carries. We'll move on to old business. Our first agenda, actually our only agenda item, is the 2024-25 student and staff school calendars. It's an action item, Mr. Cruz.
Thank you. Before I get into that, just getting a note here that our microphones don't cast out to the room. They actually provide sound pickup for those viewing online. You just make sure you're talking into your mics so that they can hear. That would be great. The old business item in front of you is approval of student and staff calendars for the school year 2024-2025. These were studied at the last board meeting. Fundamentally, they follow the same format as we have in many years past, with the simple adjustments of moving things forward relative to where holidays fall, like July 4th and Christmas. So happy to answer any questions about that. I'll go ahead and make the recommendation. The Vail School District Governing Board approve the 2024-2025 student and staff calendars as presented.
Thank you. I'll accept a motion.
Motion to approve as presented.
Thank you,
I'll
Mr.
second.
Buster, and then Mrs. Anderson seconds. Comments or questions?
Looks good.
Looks good. Okay,
Yeah.
I know we studied this last time. This sometimes feels like, oh, let's brush over it, but we know how important calendars are. So thank you so much for the work that went into this. If there are no comments or questions, I will call for the vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Not seeing any, the motion carries. We'll move on to new business. Our first item is the 2023-24 community programs and Vail inclusive preschool tuition fees.
Thank you, President Pratt. Members of the board, I'm going to ask Mrs. Kubiak to help me with this agenda item. The general overview, though, is the recommendation of a cost adjustment for the tuition fees associated with our preschool programs, frankly, to keep up with rising cost of minimum wage and employment costs. Mrs. Kubiak.
President Pratt, Mr. Crew, government board members. Every year we look at our expenses and what we're going to be up against and have to adjust our fees accordingly. So we have provided you with information tonight to study regarding fees that we would like to increase to for next year for our not only community programs preschool, but the VIP preschool and community programs before and after school programs as well. Again, it's the cost of doing business continues to rise with wages and materials and supplies.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is a study item. We'll bring it back to the board next time. Do you have any questions?
Any questions? Mrs.
Previously, we've had Mr. Aiken's input, standing in the private sector of this work. And so we were always able to get his perspective. Do you have an idea of how this compares to private daycare preschool offerings?
Mr. Cruz?
This could be it.
Thank you. Member Tippett, we had some comparisons for you to look at, and we are in the median of where the prices are. We try to do our best to keep our cost as low as possible, and just want to make sure that we're being fiscally responsible, not only with our funds, but with the money that the families are paying.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Do you have any follow-up questions?
Think of it.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, this is a study item, so I think we'll see you again on this one.
Thank you.
Our next item is the career and technical education. This is an informed item, Mr. Cruz.
B, item B.
Oh, B, I'm so sorry. I'm trying to get ahead of ourselves. Next one is 2022-23 spring assessment schedule. It's also an informed item. Thank you, Mr. Cruz.
Thank you, President Pratt, members of the board. We had all this wonderful comments about Vail Pride Day and all the relationship pieces, and that is so much who we are. That is built on an incredibly strong foundation of providing really high quality academics for our students. And we are entering a critical time period of our academic calendar in regards to the assessments that measure how students are progressing and give us feedback so that we can continue to do a great job and fine-tune things so we can do it even better. So Mrs. Penn is here to just review those, that schedule, the tests that were there, because the acronyms for many years changed about every year. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mrs. Penn.
Thank you, President Pratt, Mr. Cruz, members of the board. Before I start going through this information, first of all, I wanted to make sure that you had something to follow along, because all of the acronyms and all of the different assessments can be pretty confusing. So what you have in front of you with the ORE school colors proudly displayed are an alternating sequence of the assessments that we're going to be kind of going through. And I would be remiss if I did not mention that Ms. Kelly Pinkerton helped put this together and oversees all of the testing to make sure that it goes smoothly, that everyone is trained, and that that all of the expectations around testing are met. And my goodness, she crosses every T and dots every I. So just want to appreciate her as we look at this. So the first assessment that you see on the list here is the Azella. This is an assessment for our English language learners that helps us determine that they are gaining skills and progressing in their English language acquisition at a rate that we would expect them to. So this is happening across all grade levels, because of course we're working with language learners at any grade level. And this assessment will be finishing up on March 17th. The COG-AT, our second assessment here, we do a district-wide screening of every second grader to see if they are in that range in which that we provide services in that the gifted category. It also helps us determine students' needs just individually and helps us be able to kind of tailor and identify students that may not fall into that gifted range, but who are very high achieving and also have, there's services that we can provide to them above and beyond what we do just specifically with those students who are in that gifted range. We have a really kind of clear direction and mindset around our students, and that is that they have needs at any level, and it's our best responsibility to work to meet those needs. So this assessment helps provide not only the information about those falling into the gifted category, but what the needs are of every student. The third is our ASA state examination. This is the one that has been AIMS and then has been AZ Merit and AZM2 and is now ASA. And it's the state assessment on our academic standards. This is for grades 3 through 8, and we're coming into testing season. The end of this week, Ms. Pinkerton will be training all of our student achievement teachers so that they can carry that out on site, and testing begins on April 3rd. Then we have our Arizona Sci, AZ Sci. This is the science assessment that has not transitioned to the ASA, but it's been in place for multiple years now. We're assessing students in 5th grade, 8th grade, and 11th grade on those science standards. That testing begins March 20th. You can see the date range there through April 14th. Then we're looking at our 9th grade students, and they're taking the Aspire assessment beginning in early April. This is, it's not pre-ACT, but it is in the lineage of ACT. So it gives us kind of a baseline as far as how our students are doing, and then we can use those scores and individually work with students over the course of the next couple of years to help them meet those goals and expectations on ACT. For 10th graders, this is not a state required assessment, but it is one that we have been putting in place for multiple years that gives us some information. It is the actual pre-ACT. I think one of the important things that I want to mention about this is that we are, it's not a state required assessment, and we are transitioning from that pre-ACT platform to Performance Matters, which is our own in-district assessment platform. And that has questions that are aligned to ACT. We've looked at making this transition for a couple of reasons. One, it gives us full access to the item bank that is aligned, so we can not only create that pre-ACT-like assessment, but we can also create other checkpoint assessments or use those questions in other ways instructionally. And it does have a significantly reduced cost as compared to the administration of the pre-ACT. Then at 11th grade, we'll have our ACT testing starting in March 21st and 22nd. There are a couple of different windows there. Students are allowed to take the test more than one time. Their high score is what counts. This is the state required assessment at the high school level that goes into our school letter grade ratings for high schools. Then we have the MSAA. This is an alternative assessment. It is a state required assessment. It's for students who are unable to, it is the expectation of having them take the ACT or the ASA is not part of their IEP program. They're working on the skills that are associated with the MSAA. It's the multi-state, it's the alternative assessment. We have approximately 1% of our student population that will be participating in this assessment. It is also counted in the data for our school label system. So it is part of that suite of assessments. And then we're also coming right into the CTE assessment system, assessment timing, starting on March 20th. And these are assessments when we think about those students who have gone through multiple connected courses, and then they're assessing at the end of that coursework. This is the CTE assessment that we see here. So busy time of year. Fortunately, not every student takes all of these. There's a couple here and there that our students are taking. And if you have any questions, anything I can answer, I'd be happy to do that.
Thank you. Comments or questions, Mrs. Tippett?
Just, I think I tracked it fairly well, but could you go down and maybe just tell us the ones that aren't required? That might be easier.
That aren't required.
Mr. Cruz?
Thank you. President Pratt, Mr. Cruz, members of the board. The COG-AT is not required. It's good practice. And so we have that in place. And maybe I'll just go through them one at a time and just speak to that. So Azella is required, and it is part of our school profile, but it is required outside of that. COG-AT is not required. ASA is required. AZ-PSI is required. Aspire is required. Pre-ACT is not required. ACT is required. MSAA is required. And the CTE testing, I would have to get clarification from Mr. Schmidt. I believe that it is also required.
He's shaking his head. Yes.
He's in the audience. I'm so excited. Mr. Schmidt. Yes, it is required.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions, Mr. King? Oh.
Thank you, President Pratt, is the CTE, is that part of the credentialing process?
Mr. Cruz?
Ms. Penn?
President Pratt, Mr. Caruth, members of the board.
I feel like now we have to think of all these CTE questions. Do you have a follow-up question?
No, that was it.
Okay.
I didn't know if that was part of the.
Yeah. Okay, we can only ask yes or no CTE question. All right. Ms. Anderson,
I'll
do you
get
have
him after me.
Yeah. Ms. Anderson.
So I guess my question, you said Aspire is in the lineage of ACT, so you have like the Aspire, they're doing 9th grade, and that pre-ACT through Performance Matters 10th grade, correct? When those are scored, are they being scored like ACT? Because I guess what does that look like, and how does that help as, you know, for the kids that are really wanting to get their scores to a certain point? Are you able to compare scores on these to really, does that, my question make sense?
So what you're asking is, I guess what you're asking is kind of that pre-ACT, how does that correlate to their actual?
And the Aspire,
and
if it's in the lineage of ACT, and do the scores
track each other?
kind of track each other? Does it?
Mr. Cruz?
Yeah, summary is it useful information, provide useful information to move forward, actionable on the next assessment. Really good question, Mrs. Penn.
President Pratt, Mr. Cruz, members of the board. It would be a close correlation. I don't believe that it is absolutely a perfect correlation. I don't think that this is data that we can use and say this is a score that would be what you could expect your score to be on pre-ACT. I think what it gives us is information about what students know and what they can do and how they're able to how they're able to respond to that question type. The question type is very different than what we have on our current benchmark assessment. So it does provide that piece of it. But I don't think that it's going, and we do also have the ability to generate reports, but I think it's not it's not going to be exactly the same way as the pre-ACT.
Or ACT.
Or ACT, is that what?
Because I'm looking for here's my follow-up question, sorry.
No, you're please, Ms. Anderson.
I guess I'm just thinking of students who are, like trying to get certain scores for college and can they track where they're, Anyway, at
Mhm.
least I guess. Is what
I'll tell you I mean, I'm not sure with performance matters how that's gonna change, but for my kids, I've had 3 kids now take the pre-ACT and then the ACT, and their scores were very similar. So I would say between those two, they did track. I'm not sure. I think your question is just how it's gonna change for performance matters.
Yes. I'm trying to formulate the question because while they're slightly different, they're also slightly different purposes to hold us to anchor. One is really to anchor us through the K-8 standards, and the other is really to look beyond into the ACT world. I think, is that a fair summary, Mrs. Penn? I mean, and that's part of frankly, as the assessment process has changed in Arizona over the last several years, that's one of the questions that has been there is most high school kids, when you're doing the assessment, is it a useful assessment in 11th grade, 12th grade to go on to college? Whereas being a standards-based state, so we have state standards. How do we know that we're measuring those state standards? How do we know that students are learning those state standards? How do you do that when you then switch to an ACT as the capstone exam, right? And so it's hard to make it an exact alignment between those two things because the ACT or pre-ACT doesn't measure exactly Arizona state standards. And so that's a high level process to this, but there are pieces that you can pull out. Is that, Mrs. Penn, and clean up anything or add
President-
more depth to that if there's places to do so?
President Pratt, Mr. Kruth, members of the board. I think what I'm hearing in the explanation that Mr. Kruth is giving that I really kind of latch on to is the kind of the hybrid nature of it. So it gives us the opportunity to look at the connection between the assessment questions and the instruction, but also have the assessment questions be like the ACT and like the Aspire questions, which are our current like benchmarks are not written like ACT. So it gives us the flexibility of a district assessment and our ability to align it with the instruction, but it gives us the format of an ACT question.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Bester.
Probably higher level question. I'm kind of looking for the short answer here. Just looking at the AZSCI, it's targeted toward grades 5th, 8th, and 11th. And then looking at the MSAA, it's targeted for grades 3rd through 8th and the 11th. Why those specific grades?
Mr. Cruz?
Mrs. Penn.
President Pratt, Mr. Caruth, members of the board. So if you look at the MSAA grades, those are the same grades that you'll notice in the ASA and the ACT. So those are the grades that the state assesses, 3rd through 8th and 11th. And then the MSAA matches that. So it's the students who are in those same grades, those same testing grades, but who need an alternative option for their state assessment. For the AZ-SCI, the 5th, 8th, and 11th grade, those are the grades that are the highest level for example, for elementary, 5th grade is that highest. So it is a test that is not specifically about 5th grade content, but it's a test designed to understand a student's ability in elementary science content. And then at 8th grade, it's designed to determine a student's ability with middle school content, and 11th grade is with high school content. So it's like a capstone assessment for the science content of that grade band.
Thank you. Any other follow-up? Okay. So Ms. Penn, I just for context, a reminder for all of us, but then also for the new board members, there's some, at least my understanding, especially the ACT, there's some testing that we have a kind of a choice on what testing that we do, right? Is that correct? So some of these, while it's required, it's not necessarily required that the ACT is done as much as a testing, or it has that changed? Mr. Cruz?
It's changed.
Okay.
And
So maybe it's for me.
yeah, those are part of the changes and part of the reason we want to bring this forward.
President Pratt, Mr. Cruz, members of the board, you're exactly right in that there was a time period when we had the opportunity to choose assessments, and at that time, we could choose SAT, ACT, or the state AZM2, I think it was at that time. There were a few districts across the state that went out kind of ahead of everyone and selected ACT as their state assessment. That caused a little bit of problems across the state, having multiple different assessments. So there has been this shift now to all schools now have one assessment again. So that menu of assessments is no longer in place. We have the one assessment, which is ACT.
Okay. And that's true for all of them, Mr. Cruz? Yes. Okay, great. Thank you. Any other comments or questions?
Mrs. Pratt?
Yes, Ms. Tippett.
So, remind me on the policy side, what types of schools or students in the state of Arizona are required to take these? So particularly, does a homeschool student take this? Does a charter school student take this? Does a private school student that accepts public money take this? If you could just paint the picture.
Yeah, these are for, thank you, President Pratt. Miss Tippett,
Yeah.
you guys were just there.
I know, sorry.
Any public school, whether it's charter or traditional public school, is required to take these assessments. Really, that's outside of that, that's it. Homeschool students, no. Students who take ESA, families who choose to take ESA funds, no. Private schools, no. So, and there's part of that reason is anchored in federal law that if you accept federal money, you have to take assessments to see how students are doing, and that is in place to understand how primarily students poverty are doing and what needs to, that's the connection to that, and what are states doing from a policy standpoint to help at-risk populations. But no to private schools, homeschools, and students who take the essays. Otherwise, yes.
Thank you. Do you have a follow-up? Nope. No.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments or questions?
I just want to add before we move on, Mrs. Penn recognized Mrs. Pinkerton, and that is absolutely true. I just also want to affirm that watching Kelly go through this process with other staff, it's pretty amazing to see and the depth of understanding and knowledge that she imparts to our SATs and principals and who impart to our staff is just outstanding. Mrs. Penn forgot to mention herself also, who has an incredible depth of understanding and knowledge around assessments and has been a part of the Arizona Technical Advisory Committee on what's assessments, why are we using those assessments, and how are we using those assessments for quite some, for several years now. So our ability to track the changes in a time period where there's really been unprecedented change in regards to assessments at the state level, we've been right in the forefront. There's a reason that Mrs. Penn and Mr. Hurley packed a room full of people in Northern Arizona who are coming to understand what to do with those data, because we have staff that know at a level, frankly, that outstrips what's at the Department of Ed. I can say that with confidence, having spent some time there with that, with what that looks like. It's really impressive. We're in a really good piece. And to your point, about what's the alignment and how to pull those data apart, we're in a position because of that knowledge to really be able to look at the granular differences amongst those assessments and then draw out pieces and make informed change in decisions for students, whether they're aiming to improve whether they're aspiring to the Aspire or taking those data and aiming at the ACT. So we're in really good shape.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. I anytime that we're talking with Mrs. Penn, I feel like we can talk about testing and data for longer than I thought was actually humanly possible. So thank you. It's always very interesting. Thank you. Okay, now we're going to move to item C, career and technical education. Now we could ask all of our questions, not even yes or no questions. This is also an informed item, Mr. Kruth.
Thank you, President Pratt, members of the board. There's a reason that CTE was on the bottom of on the top of the bottom of the list for the assessments. That's because Mr. Schmidt is up next, and actually it's CTE month. Mr. Schmidt, take it away.
I guess I should ask first, President Pratt, with your permission, can I deliver gifts
You may.
to the board?
Yes, you may. Thank you.
I want to point out that the first thing avoided very got.
Oh, okay. We won't judge you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
T-shirts.
It is too small for a hammer.
No, we have other ones.
It's too small for a hammer.
Oh, and we got some stickers. It's the small things.
Thank you. Yes, go ahead.
President Pratt, Mr. Kruth, members of the school board. It is CT month. That's what February is every year. I'm also going to let you know that just personal to me, I'm wearing a zebra tie today. It's also Rare Disease Day. It's a day for the 1 in 10 in our community, actually, that's affected by a rare disease. So it kind of has two personal meanings for me as we go through today. But for the big one right here for CT month, the pack that you just got has a few fun things in it, but we want to make sure we gave those to you because the artifacts in there are what we use during our CT crawls to help educate our students on the different programs that we have. We'll talk a little bit more about that later, but we have some, we had a rock band theme this year. I noticed our shirts look very similar to the Vail blended shirts, and I was going to wonder if anyone had copied any of the stuff we did, but maybe we copied them. I think we both copied AC/DC, but you'll notice there's a shirt in there. We have all the kind of different staff members wear those. We have lots of different information packets to make it easy and accessible for principals and students and counselors to know what is involved with each of our different career and technical education programs. And of course, you got to have stickers for the water bottles. So I promise they're vinyl, they're waterproof, they'll hold up. We have 2 new board members, so I wanted to make sure that I went, brought it back to the beginning as far as tech ed's concerned. I promise I won't get too lost in the data or the enrollment. I just kind of wanted to keep it sweet and simple at 8:25 on a Tuesday. What is career and tech ed? Education that combines academic and technical skills with knowledge and training needed to succeed in today's labor market. Our CT classes are dynamic, they're great, they're rigorous. They mix work-based learning with just great classroom instruction. I think they're just the best of both worlds when it comes to what we can provide for our students. But the key of it is we intentionally pick CT programs that will help our students be successful when they leave high school. That's our Super Bowl. What are they doing when they walk outside of our doors? Every CT program has some key components to it. I think it's really traditional to have the academic and technical skills and the work-based learning. I think people think of those when they think of career and tech ed, but leadership and 21st century skills are a major part of what we do in career and tech ed. That's our CTSO. Some of you might have heard of DECA, FBLA, Skills USA. Those are clubs where kids get to not just apply the skills they're learning in the class, but they get to take on leadership qualities. They get to learn public speaking. There's lots of different fun aspects of that. And then within that, we throw in career development programs and study business partnerships. And it's this whole thing working together that makes quality CT programs. And you guys mentioned Michael Keck's construction program earlier. I mean, when I think of a great CT program, I think Michael Keck's program is amongst the best in the whole state of Arizona. And we got a lot of ones just as good as Mike's. And so the more you want to get around and see some of these, please, I encourage you to do it. And I'm more than happy to walk you around myself and brag on them a bit. We'll cruise through these pretty quick. What does CT programs mostly offer? Well, even Michael's program offers dual enrollment. Not a lot of people know. You sit in Michael Keck's classroom, you get 14 credits at Pima Community College dual enrollment. That's quite a bit when you take it over there upon graduation. Obviously, industry relevant standards, state technical assessments, which are required, are not part of a credential. We also do credential assessments as tied to it, generally third-party credentials that are honored within the industry, and in most cases required by industry for that student to participate in work straight out of high school. classrooms, lab-based learning, hands-on, it's dirty, it's under a car, it's in a welding booth. You go to Micah Mountain, it's in a culinary kitchen. I mean, our students are doing so many different dynamic things. I walked in a law and public safety classroom the other day and saw people getting handcuffed, and it's just, I'm going to tell you, it's pretty exciting to walk in some of the classrooms and see the things that are going on. But we also do a lot of offsite internships and externship opportunities that we might not see in the school environment. Every year, 50 different kids commit to a full year-long internship program, and it's not easy. That's like SEP on steroids on steroids. I don't condone steroid use, but you get the concept. CTSOs, as we talked about earlier, this was my favorite part of my CTA experience when I was in high school, was the club part. It was the, trying to raise money and awareness and do different fun things. It was the overnight trips to the leadership conference. It was the having to get up and talk in front of people in public speaking for the first time. I think a lot of our students also get to enjoy that. And we have a few brag moments on our CTSOs, but they've done really well lately in terms of not just the leadership components, but the competitions. Now, things I always like to remind people, CT works, right? These are all research and evidence-based statements. CT students who take at least 2 classes are more likely to be employed full-time after graduation than people who aren't. On average, higher median earnings 8 years after graduation if you take at least 2 CT classes in high school. You're more likely to enroll in post-secondary opportunities, and you're more likely to graduate high school. So it's just taking those 2 CT classes while you're in high school is kind of the secret sauce to success after you leave our schools. What's the value that being career in tech ed brings to our community? Well, it's easy to measure in terms of dollar and cents because we get a lot of different funding opportunities from the Pima County JTED as well as from different federal and state grants. Over $2.5 million in funds comes to our district each year, and it just continues to grow and grow and grow as our school district grows, but also as our kids find passionate programs that they stick into and they stay in and increase our enrollment year after year. Now, what does money equate to? It's not a scoreboard. Trust me, money's not the scoreboard, right? The scoreboard is taking that money and being able to put it into our programs and increase those really great opportunities that our students see. Michael Keck didn't have a shade structure above the tiny house area until we built it, right? And where did that money come from? It came from, frankly, the Pima County JTED in this case. So it's creating and enhancing our student opportunities so that they can do more powerful and creative things. Over the last 10 years, we've had over 300 internships. That doesn't, I hope that sounds like a lot. Some people expect it, to not, but it's a powerful thing when you think of that's 300 kids who went into our community and became part of an organization, not as a kid, but working peer-to-peer with adults. And that's one of the things we like to sell with our internship program. There's no discredit to working at McDonald's, but when I worked at Taco Bell as a kid, I worked with a bunch of other kids. And what we're sending our internships to is they're working with people all of our age and having to learn what that looks like and what that feels like in an appropriate work environment. And they're there long enough to actually be relied upon as a reliable work portion of the environment. Last year, we had over 900 industry credentials that were issued to our students. That's not the state CT assessment, but that is ASC certifications for our automotive kids, it's medical assisting certificates, it's so many different first aid, OSHA 10. We offer things that you need in industry to be successful. Vail CT concentrators graduation rate is nearly 95%. It's outstanding. A lot of people, when I was in school, everyone always thought of the voc ed kid, right? And they always thought that's the kid that we're just tagging along here and dragging through, and that is not who that kid is. That kid in our school district, the CTE kid, is more likely to graduate than any other kid in that school. And it's a pretty powerful statement of what CT does for our students. Because it doesn't just give them the tools to be successful in school, it gives them the purpose to continue staying in school and to want to be successful in school. And obviously we have countless work-based learning opportunities through Vail. I always like to take this opportunity to thank the board and Mr. Caruth for this because, building a bunch of tiny houses and putting people in them requires a lot of faith and commitment from your school board, from your superintendent, and from a lot of different stakeholders. And that's just one of many different work-based learning opportunities our students have. You all know the different places where we offer CTE within our school district. Everywhere would be the correct answer. But the one I wanted to highlight on this screen is the Pima County JTED. We partner with them with everything that we do. a student going to them and being successful is a win for us, as if the student was here in our own schools achieving that same end. And it's because it's that partnership that really expands on student opportunity. There are programs that the Pima County JTED can offer because they have the efficiency of the entire county. There might be 22 kids in the whole county that want to like do dental technician, right? And we couldn't offer that for our 2, but Pima County JTED is able to offer that and provide that as an avenue of success for our students. So having that relationship is a very big deal, and having the Bridges campus be opened recently, another place I really encourage you to go check out. It's a beautiful campus just off of Keno. Great place to be, great place for our students. So just a couple highlights of things that are going on. The Empire High School CT STEM Center, a long time in the making, is finally at a place where like we have an actual STEM center. So I'd like for you guys to come check it out. Beautiful digital media and engineering labs. We were just talking about equipment we were buying for the engineering lab today. And the one thing that I was really sticking on, and it's because I've been inspired by the workers that we have out here in the district office, is I wanted like a CNC machine that would cut into a Yeti cup. I keep getting to that point, but I'm always about student enterprise and how are students going to take this and turn it into other types of skills that will help them along. And so we looked through a lot of different fun equipment today for the engineering program. We had to raise the ceilings and put in giant green screens and different lighting fixtures for our digital media programs. They really made it look sharp. Over with Mr. Parks over here, we've been hosting the Andrada cybersecurity and engineering pathway meetings, where we're adding cybersecurity. It's so timely that we're adding cybersecurity, but we're adding it as an addition to the engineering pathway at Andrada. And what really is exciting for me about it is not just the interest that we have at a local level in terms of our teachers and our community members, but we have the entire Pima Community College Cybersecurity College like group with us working, just cheerleading us along the way and working with us so that we can offer dual enrollment, helping guide us, because I don't know about you, I don't know a lot about cybersecurity outside of it's important, and thank goodness Mark Green is in charge of it, right? But we are really excited about adding that on over there. And that'll start next year, but it's officially starting now, but it will be even deeper next year. And then just kind of like a hint at the skill of the CTSO success that our kids have been having recently. We're still in like the thick of competition season, so I don't have like a ton to talk to you about with it. But our Empire High School Skills USA team for digital media just went to their regional competition. And we have a TV and video teacher, Richard Booth, and his kid took first place in the whole county, and it was such a big deal. And then we have a photo teacher, Sean Roby, who took first, second, and third in the photo competition, and his kids took first, second, and third in the print competition, which means every digital photo teacher in the whole city doesn't really like us, right? But it's just it's a real testament to the commitment that these teachers have to the students to see these through. It's very hard to encourage kids to have that commitment to these different competitions. So for those teachers to show that kind of success, it doesn't just speak to the student, it speaks to that teacher and that advisor as well. We have a website. We always like to direct people to it. If you ever have any more questions about what type of programs we offer, obviously, please feel free to reach out to me anytime. But cte.vailschooldistrict.org. It's a dynamic website because not only is it really helpful in terms of just exploring and seeing what programs we have, but when you click on any one of the programs, it walks students through what work-based learning they can expect to see, what outcomes in terms of professional outcomes they can expect to see, and it can even talk to you about what the median income could be if you choose to be an engineer. So there's all kinds of little different pieces to it. We like to think of it as a website that's also a career exploration portal for our students. Big special thanks to the staff. I want to give like a special thanks to Kim Bailey, who was like, we need to make the bags really nice and put the stuff in them and make sure we have the t-shirts. So Kim did all that kind of stuff. She's our CTE coordinator, and she does our outreach and counseling. And so she's been just a really big plus to us. And obviously our team of Todd Welch, Lindsay Wall, and Maureen Hutchison are dynamic, great, provide a huge service to our schools, and couldn't do any of this stuff without them. But I think the most important group to thank is you. We don't have great CT programs. We don't have really great student opportunities without a trusting and outstanding school board. So thank you for providing us the opportunity to build opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Great
Great presentation. Are there comments or questions from board members? Mrs. Anderson?
Can I just make a comment? I don't really have a question.
You can do
And I'm gonna
anything.
try to
but-
do this without getting emotional, but I just want to say thank you because those students are my kids and I have seen in my home the blessing and the changes because of the programs. And so as we tour the schools, it has been so great to see, and I'm excited to see, each school as we go, but seeing these programs and seeing these kids in action doing it. But in my home, I'm seeing it. And when you talk about that you're working for after high school, it gives them a place in high school. And my daughter has a place in just, I see these teachers too, who are, anyway, it just is amazing what you guys are doing. And thank you from a mom. So I just represent a lot of moms.
Thank you. Other comments, Mr. King?
Yeah, I got to, last year I got to go to the JTED graduation. There were 800 students there that graduated that night. 100 of them were missing. So 700 walked across the field at Keno. 100 of them were at work. So, and while I was sitting there, I was trying to see, there was some people there that were hiring out of Pima JTED, and there were people hiring our students and other students right off the field. So what you're doing is great. Thanks.
Awesome. Mrs. Tippett?
I'm excited about the website addition with the upgrade, the additions of like the income piece and what kind of skills the kiddo could expect to learn in that program. I've got a kid who's interested in like 8 things and he's going to high school next year and he's going to have to like focus. And that is a really great tool for me as a parent to be able to go over and say, okay, so in this program, these are the things you're going to learn. And now let's compare that to this program and these are the things you're going to learn. What do you think you want to check out? And both of my children, one who has graduated, one who is graduating this year, are pursuing career paths that they learned about as part of their CTE courses. One at Andrada and one at Cienega, so multiple schools represented in that as well. So I appreciate you fighting the stigma that CTE kids are different kids. CTE kids are all our kids. All our kids need to prepare for the workplace. All of our kids need to prepare for what happens next after they graduate, every single one of them. So really great work. Question about the website, please. Is the NJROTC included in that?
Mr. Shaw, Mr. Cruz is what I meant to say.
Try to stay in the proper order.
Yeah.
I believe it is listed in there. It's one that we want to make sure all students know that they have access to, and it's a partnership that we've been able to have with the NJROTC where we can enhance what they do, and I really think that just by being in their proximity, they enhance what we do, and so that one's on there as well.
You have a follow-up one?
It's different.
Go ahead, please. You have as many as you want. There's no
Different
limit
question.
tonight.
I am really excited about the cybersecurity opportunity that's developing over at Andrada. And I think there's going to be a lot of district-wide interest in that program. I'm wondering if, as it grows, if there's an opportunity for a 0 hour that maybe could include students from other sites.
Great question, Mr. Cruz.
Ms. Tippett, one of the things that we always try to do is offer our classes at times that maximize our resources. We don't offer redundant classes between schools on purpose, just so we have really great programs throughout the district. I would lean on Mr. Parks as we grow, because it will obviously be up to him to help coordinate that. But oftentimes when we have a lot of interest in a program and students can't go to that school, we always try to open things up when we can. But to be very fair, part of the high school choice process is making that tough choice that if you can't pick that school, then you're not really able to follow that pathway of that CT program through. And rarely are we able to tell a student from another school that we can offer the full breadth of what the program offers. So sometimes it might be a matter of offering a 0 hour med assisting course because the early college kids need to come take it, but they were Andrada kids who took the first 2 courses. So I guess that's my nice way of saying we do the best we can to give everyone opportunity. But once you've selected your high school, I think that does narrow your focus a little bit in terms of what career and tech ed programs you have access to, as well as a myriad of other differences between our schools.
Thank you. You good? Okay, other comments or questions? Mrs. Duster?
Just a comment. Thank you. As a father, definitely helped my child to own himself, get himself together, and inevitably he not only made it through the program, graduated the program, moved on to the U of A, became an engineer, graduated at the top of his class from engineering school, went on to become a developmental engineer with the United States Air Force, and he is just going like gangbusters and just has so many fond memories about this program. As an employer, phenomenal. These are the types of skills that are not only demanded, but necessary to be productive citizens out in the workforce. You're doing outstanding work. And I guess as a citizen of this community, I see there's that the great resignation that has hit us worldwide, but more importantly in this community. And now you're making these individuals productive citizens here in this community, which is phenomenal. So I see them out and about and they're taking care of others. Even if this is not their primary vocation, they have these rudimentary skills that they can use in their personal life. They can reach out and help others. So again, phenomenal. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? I just want to say, I love this. I love that kids don't have to choose, I want to do CTE or go to this high school. They can choose both. They can go to any of our high schools and they have amazing programs at all of them. So thank you so much for your work. We appreciate it. Thank you. All right, we're going to move on to the next item, item D, school safety update. It's also, I'm sorry, yes, please.
Also wanted to acknowledge Rare Disease Day. Aaron Schmidt is really pouring a lot of time and effort from his family and from his own personal self and bringing awareness to rare diseases. And while rare diseases are rare on a specific instance, it's not rare to have one.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, we're going to go to item D, school safety update. This is an inform item also. Mr. Kruth.
Thank you, President Pratt and members of the board. We've done at least one update on school safety since we've been meeting through the summer. I'm having Mr. Kevin Carney, Ms. Heather Stow bring us up to speed on where we are at this point. Mr. Carney.
Thank you, President Pratt, Mr. Kruth, and members of the board. Just two quick follow-ups to what Mr. Schmidt said before we dive into safety. One, as a follow-up to the tiny home piece, we're excited within the next month, we should have our 6th tiny home in the land between the tracks. And we already have an identified staff member for that tiny home. And Arizona Illustrated was looking at housing for teachers across Arizona. And the producer of that show shared with me that they looked at a number of home ventures for teachers and identified our program as one that they felt was worthy of broadcasting out to others as a model for the state of how you might look at teacher housing. So we're really excited about that. We want to thank Mr. Schmidt and all his work with CTE. And I also want to say, thanks a lot, Mr. Schmidt. You brought gifts, you brought glib, you had good stories, you even got audience applause. That's a tough act to follow, sir. And while we don't have gifts and we may not get applause, we've got some good information and we got some smiles. Right, Heather? All right.
We're excited.
With that in mind, as Mr. Cruz said, we spoke to the board previously this year as we came out of the summer and wanted to share with the board where we're at with regard to both to school safety. On two sides of the ledgers, we want you to be thinking about as we talk about school safety, the psychological side, and then also the physical safety of our schools today. And this evening, we're just going to talk about the psychological side. We're going to review some of the things that we have in place that we think we're in a good spot with. But then we also want to address, when we came before you last time, we recognized we had some things that we needed to improve and efforts we're making towards those improvements. So with that in mind, as in terms of where we're at with regard to psychological safety, we've leaned heavily into the work of the Secret Service, who have taken a look at all of the targeted school violence incidents dating all the way back to Columbine. And they've identified what are the things that schools can do to best mitigate any targeted school violence efforts. And so in that is where we've identified that those areas of psychological safety and then the
to school safety as well in terms of things such as, locks and fencing and things of that nature. Let's see here. A couple of things in terms of the psychological side. One of the things that, or two of the pieces that we feel we're in a good space with is that we have across the district a common language for it, how it is in terms of how we want to treat each other with regard to student to student, student to staff, staff to student, and staff to each other. And that's something that the Secret Service has identified as an important characteristic. And so we feel like that's a good solid component in place. Additionally, as we look back at survey from last year, we on an annual basis, we survey our students. And this was pretty telling data. At the elementary level, 97% of students said that had grown up at my school cares about kids. At the middle school level, 92% of students said yes when asked if they have a trusted adult that they can go to for support. At the high school level, 90% of students said that all or most of my teachers interact with me in a positive and respectful manner. And then we know that's critical that students feel that they're connected with adults on campus in terms of school safety. In addition to that, according to the Secret Service, they recommended that there was a certain ratio of counselors to provide support for students. And so over the past year, we've increased that support, going from 28 counselors in our schools to 41 total counselors. And so we're making good progress there as well. We also have had a reboot on our positive behavioral intervention and supports. Just as a reminder, that's a tiered framework where we look to provide support for all of our students with regard to behavioral, academic, social, emotional, and mental health. And we look to say, how can we cast a net to not only help all students, but then if there are students who have particular needs, how can we drill in, identify those students and provide them any types of services that they may need. And so we worked really hard on our systems, our practices, analyzing data to not only reaffirm our efforts, but improve on our efforts with students in those regards. We've also continued to shore up and pay attention to our need for suicide awareness and prevention. Every 3 years, we make sure that all of our staff is trained on QPR, which is questioning, persuading, referring as it relates to suicide prevention and intervention. We then have trained up school personnel who, if we have identified kids who may need some additional assistance, that we have folks who can work with those kids. And then we have identified outside agencies who, if we are needing additional help outside of our staff, they can step in and assist us in those efforts as well. So that's a little bit about our current strengths. I'm going to turn over to Heather, who wants to talk to you about what are the pieces that we've been doing to identify or to address the gaps that we have in the psychological and climate safety. Heather?
Thank you, Mr. Carney. President Pratt, Mr. Cruz, members of the board. We use the same tool through the Secret Service to identify these gaps, and these are the gaps that we shared with you this past summer that we wanted to make progress to address this year. And so what you see in white are the gaps, and the black pieces we feel we have pretty solidly in place. So in Tier 2, you'll see that we felt that we needed some sort of threat assessment team on each campus, and we also needed some coordinated training around that. And then in Tier 1, looking for we have our Tier 1 kind of safety net for suicide prevention that we're teaching our staff and students. What are the signs to look for when a student may be having thoughts of suicide? We wanted a similar safety net for when they might be thinking of a threat to others. And so some sort of see something, say something training is what we were looking for. And then also currently for our central reporting mechanism, we have our hotline that goes to a voicemail. And so one of the gaps that we saw was how could we update that to a capacity that may be a little more beneficial in responding to either a threat to self or a threat to others. The other piece around safety data, everything you see in black, we feel like we have solidly in place. We already, through our PBIS framework, are already utilizing a lot of solid data through our SWIS data, our referrals, our attendances to help to track kids who are at risk so that we can build the appropriate interventions. One gap that we saw is through our student, parent, and staff survey. We were utilizing it at a site basis, but we weren't utilizing it in district-wide capacity. So those are pieces that we saw that we really wanted to work on during the school year to build on. And so what you see in front of us is what we've built. And this is truly based on our suicide prevention framework. So and we wanted to combine it. We didn't want it to feel like something new for staff, but just that we were broadening the safety net not just from threat to self, but to threat to others as well. So you'll see in there the components of suicide prevention framework with QPR training, assist, and then referral to community resources. What we've added are those gaps that I just talked about. So anonymous reporting, there were a team of us on our safety team that took the time to review numerous anonymous reporting systems. And so we're looking at that and trying to figure out what would work best. And so some of these were pretty intricate. And so we decided for now that what we're going to try to work on is to take our current voicemail hotline and expand that to something that could allow text capabilities, just to make a little more access and a little more usability for our students. The other piece that you'll see that we added is see something, say something. Sandy Hook Promise provides it's similar to our QPR training, but it's for threat to others. So you'll see two different trainings there in parentheses. One is start with hello, and that's really looking for kids who may be self-isolating, and it's teaching our staff and our students how to approach them and how to include them, just as that early filter of helping our kids to feel like they belong and they feel connected to our schools. The other training that you'll see is Say Something. That is more for our middle schools and high schools, and that's teaching our students and our staff the signs of if a student may be thinking of threatening others in some way. And so that's just casting that safety net similar to what we had for QPR. The piece that we have above that in tier 2, if there would be some sort of red flag around threat to others, is a CSTAG training. And so what that is, it's a threat assessment training. So we would build, we're planning on building a small team, threat assessment team at every site. And then this training would be given to each of our teams from our 22 sites. We also went through the process of vetting another model called Salem Kaiser Cascade model. They're very similar models. The reason that we're going with the CSTAG training is because it is funded by the trust and we're able to do that training for free. Also, it is something that a lot of other districts in the county and state are going through as well. So it helps to align districts that then helps us to align with law enforcement. And so all of those pieces fall into place. And that's a third piece that you'll see that we've added is if needed, then we would into tier 3, we could also refer to community resources in either instance, or if needed, law enforcement. We just wanted to update you to make sure that you knew the direction that we're going. We're working with principals to lock down a date for the CSTAG training. We have our suicide prevention team solidly in place. Amanda Cook is leading those efforts. She actually met with her suicide prevention team today to talk about the broadening into that see something, say something, and start with hello training. So they'll be owning those pieces as well.
Thank you. Any comments or questions from the board members? Mrs. Tippett?
Earlier during Kevin's portion of the presentation, we were talking about closing the gap between the Secret Service's recommended number of counselors versus how many we have. And I know we have done a significant leap in closing that gap. Any idea how much further we would have to go to actually meet what the Secret Service recommends?
Thank you, Mr. Cruz.
I don't know specifically. We're closing the gap. How do you know?
I don't know numbers off the top of my head, Ms. Tippett, but I can get those.
Yeah. Just to pull that apart a little bit further, I know that Arizona in general is way behind the national average on that. And that's why there's been a movement. There was a movement at the state level to provide additional funds for counselors, and we have 12 or so, at least that are associated with that, with those grant funds that we received. We applied, received those grant funds, and put it right to those positions.
Thank you. Another one, Bob, go ahead.
In kind of the school safety conversations that are happening at the Capitol to, actually invest in funding school safety, is there continued conversation about increasing the numbers to follow the Secret Service's recommendations, or is that just mostly being ignored?
Good question, Mr. Cruz.
I'm not aware of any bill that is in play to add additional funding for school safety measures. There, in this session, one thing we're up against, Frank, it's just Frank, we're trying to reapply for the counseling positions. Mrs. Stow and her staff spent time right after the holiday break and sometime over the holiday break, because it was a first come, first serve, and we were first in line because they were gonna review our applications, and they put all of those things on hold as the new administration at ADE reviewed what that looks like. They're talking about trying to appropriate some of that money to SROs instead of counselors. We have been through the gyrations of what it's like to try and hire SROs, unless they change the criteria under which you can hire a school resource officer. I mean, we've chased every rabbit down the hole trying to make that go, and being out of the box as we can. We just, our local law enforcement agencies don't have additional officers to put in schools. They don't. They're understaffed as they are. So our position has been, if we can't get SROs, we want counselors in the buildings. That helps us with student safety. So we have communicated that information. Honestly, it's a little frustrating at the state level. I'll just state that, especially in the light of where we were, not just 10 months ago, at the end of last school year with Uvalde. We've pressed through, we've followed through on these pieces. Yeah, so we're keeping a real close eye on that school counselor grant and the renewals. The money is there at the state, through ADE to continue that. It's just how they will choose to reapportion.
Mr. Kruth, may I just- President Pratt, Mr. Kruth, members of the board, Amanda Cook, our lead counselor, was in a webinar on Friday and got news that they are prioritizing their current grant positions, and we should hear back on that in the next week or two. And then they're taking the rest of the amount of money, and with the new applications, they are prioritizing SROs. And then we'll backfill new applications for counselors. So it is encouraging on our end that we should be able, looks like we should be able to keep our current counselors.
That's great. Thank you. Really good question. Other questions or comments?
I just want to add, since it's school safety and the doors open, well, but guarded very closely. I'm sorry. Regarding that, some of the other pieces on there were physical things we were looking at. Mr. Wood's not able to be here tonight. However, the board has approved, and we're way down the path on providing fencing at the schools where it is below 8 feet on the perimeter fence around the interior portions of the campus, not the playgrounds. That work is beginning Monday at Corona Foothills and Sycamore. We expect that to take somewhere between 3 to 6 weeks. The panels are being built off-site, will be installed, and then once that project is close to completion, Mr. Wood will move with the contractor to the Acacia Old Vail campuses and then into the Reed Ranch area. So just wanted to provide that. That work is in process.
Great. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Really great presentation. Good stuff. Thank you.
I have one more.
Yes, Ms. Tippett. go
Sorry,
ahead.
I thought there was a part B. We have had just a few conversations about the cyber security, the safety parts, and I would love to have an executive session regarding what measures we have in place.
It's a great idea. Mr. Kruth.
Thank you, President Pratt. Ms. Tippett, yes, in fact, Mr. Breen and I were just having that conversation last week, and when might be a good time to schedule that. Just as far as busyness and other things, we're looking maybe later in the school year, maybe even might be a good summer, if everybody's here, a good summertime executive session. We could even do an executive session before a board meeting instead of a study session. So open the board meeting, start the board meeting a little early, open an executive session, do that on security, and then go to regular board meeting. But you're spot on, and we were thinking the same thing.
Awesome.
Okay. Thank you. All right. If there's no other comments or questions, we will go to the last agenda item. the updated district school nurse job description. This is a study item, Mr. Cruz.
Mr. Kearney.
Yes, thank you, President Pratt, Mr. Crew, the members of the board. Want to point out that Chris Conte, a very valued and long tenured member of our staff, is retiring in this school year. I started in Vail over 26 years ago, and a couple of years later, I met Mrs. Conte first when I was a teacher at Desert Willow, and she was the nurse there. And as we have continued to grow as a district, from that time, 4 to 5 schools to now 22 schools, Chris has over 2 decades provided service and overseeing all the health-related services in our schools. And so we want to not only celebrate her and wish her well, but we also have to look to the future to say, where are we going next with Mrs. Conte's retirement? And so as a part of that process, we pulled a team together because the needs of the district have changed over the course of 2 decades, right? And so we pulled together elementary level principal, middle school level principal, high school level principal, director of special education and human resources to say, let's take a look at our current job description as a first starting point to see if that matches what the needs of the position currently are. We also reached out to our local school districts to see what the job responsibilities are for those school districts with regard to a school nurse, and also what the pay is in the particular school districts and what their structures are. And so through that work, we've put before you the first step in this process, which is a revised job description that we're bringing before you as a study item. Our hope is that we will come back to you at a future meeting to get action on this job description. And then our intent is then to advertise the opening of this position and look to hire somebody prior to the end of the school year, sometime around the 1st of May is what our hope is, so that we can have some cross training between Mrs. Conte and the new district nurse. And so before you have that job description, and so we brought this before you, as I said, as a study item, and wanted to see if you have any feedback or questions for us on that. And I have Mrs. Emsley here, by the way, as well from HR, who's been instrumental in pushing this forward and is here to assist with any questions that you may have as well.
Thank you. Comments or questions? No or yes?
I've used mine. up.
No, I'm giving you bonus ones tonight.
Bonus
You're good.
question.
Yes, here's your bonus one.
Actually, I don't have any questions. I was just looking at our pay guide to see how that correlates with the job description, and I thought it's a good match.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? I did have a quick question, just looking at the job description. I don't have the old one. I could have maybe found it on our website. I'm not positive. Just wondering kind of structurally or just kind of what the high level changes were, because it stays the same pay level. Just wondering kind of if you felt like, just kind of wondering what those changes are, Mr. Cruz.
Yeah, President Pratt, Mr. Cruz, members of the board, by and large, I would say 90-95% of the document has remained the same. Mrs. Emsley, could you comment, if you wouldn't mind, on what are some highlights that are mentioned worthy, if you would?
President Pratt, Mr. Cruz, members of the board. So I would like to address the overall job description because there are quite a few changes in the description. We looked at, when we talked with the principals, we looked at what their needs are at the site level. And a lot of the feedback was support. They needed support for their health aides and they needed support for their students, especially the high acuity students with diabetes. And then of course our special needs students. So in talking with Ms. Wood and the principals, we crafted the job description around their needs. And it's changed significantly.
Okay.
Another piece of that change is because of the pandemic, I think. So the pandemic really brought out the need for school health and the important role that nurses play in our schools nowadays. Pima County has developed a school health coalition. We meet every 2 weeks. The district nurse is a big part of that as well. They bring out different health information related to vaccines, not just pandemic related information anymore. And that's all built into the job description. Another key aspect of the job description change is the qualifications. We have beefed up those qualifications and have added some years of experience to that area as well.
Okay. Thank you. I was wondering about that. Any other comments or questions? Thank you for doing this. my kids have been there's been periods of time in their life where they were the ones who go up to the school nurse to get a cracker or something, because their tummy's hurting. So I just think the role of the school nurse is it's tender, but it's also significant. So to have somebody fill that role to be able to support the sites and to be able to oversee that whole program. So thank you so much for your work on that. Any other comments? Ms. Tippett, you good? No? Okay. All right. Thank you so much. Our last item is adjournment. I will with the motion, I will adjourn the meeting at 9:06 p.m. Do I have a motion, Mrs. Anderson?
Second.
All right, Mr. Buster, I'm going to give it to him this time. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I don't see any opposed. I'll that motion carries. Thank you.